That's not going to work. Do I need to redo that? What does
Another.
paucity of capital mean?
We are done, right?
Yeah. We have a little game type thing.
Okay. And me careful of the mic, dodging the mic.
Am I supposed to plug in the word curious somehow? Okay. Hi Vijay. Welcome to the Curious Case of. I'm gonna do a disclaimer that my voice is not what it usually sounds like. So sorry about that. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for willing to speak to us about your story. I know that you've been sharing your story for like many 20 years maybe. I just started, and I think it was about 2 weeks ago. I was like, I'm done. Bus. I've told the same story too many times. Next time someone asks me to share my story, I'm going to send them a YouTube link and say, here, listen to it there. I actually never realized that it can be tiring and exhausting. And people would tell me, it's brave that you're sharing. It's so great that you're sharing. And I was like, whatever. But then 2 weeks ago, I was like, okay. Bus. So, genuinely, so grateful that you are willing to come and talk about it again.
My pleasure completely, Ira. Thank you so much for having me here. What you just shared resonated a lot with me because, yes, even it's a sort of a continuous loop, and then it tends to get monotonous and mechanical. You don't even feel the emotions when you are narrating your story over and over again, right? Yes, so I've been in that spot as well.
I wanted to start with just if you could paint us a picture of your childhood and growing up in Vasai, because I know that you called it a village.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted for you to paint it in your words.
I would like to go back to what made me land up in Vasai, to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents separated when I was 5. Now, when we talk about the 60s, you can imagine how stigmatizing that would be, right? It was very rare that this kind of an occurrence happened. And then also, when you bring it in the context of a village life, where these things sort of shocked people, right? Any case, that's how things panned out. And my mom took me to, rather, my maternal uncle took us back to his Vasai home. It was very magnanimous of him. He raised us all these years. But that did leave a void in me. Yeah, Ira. Because, and I then from that period on, I sort of grew up as a reticent a guy who was completely introverted, bitter person also. Yeah. I saw my mom suffer a lot as well. Maybe because of that, I held a lot of bitterness towards my dad. Yeah. So many of these things sort of kept ballooning inside me, and maybe there was a volcano waiting to erupt. So what we sort of define as a timeline when we identify as a mental health issue could be there, waiting to surface all the while.
Yeah.
Right? So I must be in my 10th standard, even earlier, I would say, in my 10th boards. And that is such a critical academic year for us, where we are so focused on our competitive grades and so on. And I felt completely disoriented. Initially, it was not so disturbing. But one thing that I noticed was my interest in academics had started sliding right from my 8th grade. Okay. Yeah. From being a top quartile kind of a student, I lost all interest in my studies. Being a very bright student, it was easy for me to clear my exams. That wasn't a problem. But then there was a disconnect between me. It was almost dystopian. It was like I was living in a sort of a world of my own within my school, classmates, completely in my own world. It was very, very disturbing when I look back at the whole experience. Yeah. And it sort of worsened when I stepped into junior college in my 11th, what used to be then 11th. Yeah. Right. And that is when I first experienced paranoia, severe depression to the extent where I felt like not getting out of bed. There was no purpose in life, and those paranoid thoughts made me believe that people were plotting against me and crazy things. But like you said, I couldn't place a finger on what was happening to me. To my mind, it was like the world was falling apart and I was going mad. Now, there is so much of, we talk about stigma, but there is so much of shame also associated with this experience, right? So much of shame. So, to open up about what I was going through felt like a massive task. Also, we talk about the gender issue and how women are subjugated. But look at the flip side of the coin. Look at what patriarchy does to men. I grew up in a very strongly patriarchal family, right? Where the men were the hero figures. And I mean, we really looked up to them, and for valid reason. They were not glorified heroes, right? So, people who had achieved a lot, stood up to all challenges of life. And that put a lot of, sort of expectation on me also. So, I had to walk in their big shoes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So to appear anything else, to come out as being weak or vulnerable was unimaginable for me. All right. And so what I did was, what I resorted to was clamming up completely.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I did was then took to art. Maybe that was a recourse. I stopped going out with friends, stopped, in fact, for a long period, I had even stopped going to school.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, I was also bullied there at that time, severely bullied. So, this is the scene that I would like to paint to you about a picture of me living a life which is sort of cut off from the world, although I am very much part of it. I'm alienated from it, right?
Sorry, if I could just ask, so when you didn't go to school,
Yeah.
what would you tell your mom or your...
Oh, yes. So the reason that was cited to the school authorities as well, because schools were very strict back then. Of course, they are still even today. So I had to take a doctor's certificate because I was also living with asthma, as a youngster, that because of his poor health, he's not fit enough to travel the 5-6 kilometers to school every day. He will make up with his studies at home. That kind of a, rigmarole to get away with my, forced leaves, so to say. And again, this coincided with a period just before my boards. Can you imagine? Yeah, right.
So you told the school that it's asthma, but what did you tell your mom?
Just flatly refused to go to school. That I'm going to make up for the studies at home. This is not working out for me. My health is not, and maybe she believed my health challenges as well back then.
Okay. Now I know, and now you know, right? That you got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But you've talked about how you got diagnosed at 40, but still you've sort of, like you said, mental health is complicated. It's not ever really just that one trigger or that one instance. It's what we remember and it's what we associate. It was not there before, now it is kind of pinpoint, but it's not actually ever that. But for some reason, that is the date or that is the age
Yes.
that has stuck with you. And it was around 14. Yeah. And then it just went away on its own?
So that is gratifyingly, these episodes used to be there for a few months, maybe sometimes 3 to 4 months, and they used to subside on their
That's
own.
still a decent amount
Oh
of time.
yes, it was hell for the months I had to endure without any assistance, no support of therapy, nothing. Can you imagine the wilderness, right? And so then what happened afterwards? I used to be almost normal. So it's like a switch on, switch off button if I look back in time now. Yeah. So for a while, I used to be then going up to college, making friends, having fun, bunking college, doing all the things, stupid things that other people do.
Mm.
So during that period, I was a regular kid, so to say.
Mm.
Yeah. And then the relapse used to happen because, of course, I was not supported by any treatment.
Mm.
And I remember in my first year degree college, when I was pursuing my graduate studies in commerce, it struck again. And the intensity of the episode then used to be, much higher. Yeah. And the grip, the duration, everything used to be exaggerated. And I recall, was the toughest year as far as our academics were concerned. And I remember that it must have been December, Jan, when the episode sort of raised its head. And there I was, again lost. Again, no opening up, not sharing anything to anybody. And the thing is, if I look back now and ask myself, how did nobody else spot it, irrespective of whether I open up or not? So, what it was assumed is these are growing up pangs, hormonal changes happening. So, in adolescence, most boys go through these kind of issues.
Mm.
Because as such, what I led to them, they didn't know the complete picture, did they?
It
Right?
was
In
kind
my
of like
family.
a closing down and clamping up
Yes.
is sometimes associated with puberty and adolescence.
And as such, as I said, I never fitted in, right? So being the odd one out, so sort of, it went along with the flow of the image I had all of the years along.
So the awareness was low, and see, hindsight is great.
Yes.
But I'm asking because I think it's really important for people. We blame ourselves a lot. We blame other people a lot. We blame many things, especially when we're lost and we're confused. And looking back, we're able to either say, this is what I could have done. This is where I could have gotten help. This is where maybe society was lacking. But while it's happening to you, none of that is
Yes.
there at all. And because you're so good at articulating yourself, I'd really love to know the thoughts that were going on in your head when they were actually happening, because that's sort of what people are going through and are not necessarily able to articulate. But now looking back, we are. So from it came at that point, you were like, I think I'm going mad. And then it went away. And then it came back.
Literally, to my mind, it was like I was falling apart, I couldn't make any sense of what was happening to me. So the first thing is, how do we describe something when we ourselves don't know what's happening to us? Yeah, it is very, very difficult to describe. And there was a lot of fear inside me, a lot of fear, agony, because what I was going through, because I couldn't express it to anybody else. Fear, agony were the dominant sort of emotions in me. Okay. I was made fun of, was told that I wasn't man enough. That hurt. So there was a lot of sense of hurt. And then, typically what happens, even in today's India, we know that people will try everything else except evidence-based treatments, right? So I was to be taken to physicians, and that guy used to tell me that this guy's got a vitamin B12 deficiency. That's why he's behaving like this, and put me onto a series of injections, okay, as supplementation. Then I was taken to a tantric. I gone through this gamut of experiences, right? And you feel like people are just, they don't know what's happening to you. That sense of hopelessness, frustration.
And you also don't know, so then you're
I
just
don't know either.
scared.
I don't know either. So, and see, again, if I look back, everything looks so strange. I'd never thought of approaching a psychiatrist or a psychologist. For that matter, I don't think I even knew at that point of time there was a professional named as a psychologist. For that matter, there was a lull from my college days till my end of till I passed out from college. There was a lull for a while, and I was relieved. I think maybe I've just
It's
conquered the
gone.
monster, right? And this is behind me. And then immediately after graduation, I joined my maternal uncle's business, and it was a very exciting business for me to get involved into as a young person also. So I think I would have been with him for around 3.5 years, 4 years, uh, and again things fell apart.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and this time the ridiculous even more because now I was no longer a kid. I was a young man of 22, 23, or 24. I don't recall the exact age, but would be around then. Uh, so again, my manhood was questioned. That look, I have so many health issues. My uncle himself had lot of health issues. He had undergone 2 heart surgeries. And literally, as I said in those words, the manned up, he just he sort of lived up to that kind of description. And here I was, in their eyes, sort of, crawling when I needed to soar. Yeah. And where it got very difficult was when, sort of my issues were completely brushed aside, where people made fun of me at office. And then I completely withdrew like a tortoise, again. So I would describe myself, that condition like it's very apt, a tortoise, getting into that shell, that hard protective shell. It's so comfortable inside. Nobody's going to pierce me there. Yeah. So yes, I think if I remember well enough, there would have been 2 episodes in that 7 year stint with my uncle. Plus, there was no room to hide now. Unlike school, where I took 2 months of leave,
Right.
I couldn't do that here, right? I
Yeah.
needed to show up every single day and sort of also function at the workplace.
And I know then that you went ahead and started your own company and your own business, and it did really well. And the reason I mention this is because a lot of times when it comes to mental illness, people think that they'll probably not be good at school. They probably won't necessarily be able to be successful in life. But you did very well in school, and you started a business that did really well. You have lots of big clients that I didn't even. Well, okay, fine. I know all of them. They're that big that I know all of them. You've said Microsoft, Tata, Infosys. So can you tell us a little bit about what you did and
Yes.
and that?
So what I did set out once I separated from my uncle, and he very graciously supported me in my enterprise. He said, "Okay, whatever you wish to be, I'm there for you." So I was toying around with various ideas. So when I began the enterprise, I had to be cautious about the various factors ahead of me. I had a good knack of sort of projecting cash flows about what was going to be a sustainable enterprise, and I chose one which really sort of resonated with me in terms of creativity, my passion, and also which I felt was viable. I think that was also essential, right? We couldn't just back a harebrained idea. So I chose the field of audio visuals. It was very nascent back then, and we were among the first people in Mumbai to purchase a video projector for rentals.
Mhm.
And we used to give it out for gigs like what we are using the setups today here. And that was a very deeply satisfying phase of my life. Well, I felt in charge, living up to all the hopes I had of myself. Now, again, this is the big question mark. So, the journey of frontline communications was from 1989 to 2004, a 14-year journey. Now, was I stable all through? Honestly, no. Too much under the brushed under the carpet. There were behavioral issues, rage issues, rage which was something somewhere at some points of time uncalled for, aggression, arrogance which was not typical of me. It wasn't about my newfound success which was taking me there. There was something else which was guiding me, sort of, right? And which was disturbing to the people around me.
Do you be able to give us an example?
When we used to pull off a very successful event at, say, Andheri Sports Complex with 35, 40,000 people in there, we are the best in the country and stuff like that. Talking about grandiose things. Uh, my spending became awry, the patterns. They were sort of just not justified. Even the business spending here, I'm talking not only about the investment decisions. So they would have lasting repercussions, right? Not just my personal spending. Uh, and being very flippant in nature, yeah. Impulsiveness. So all these were sort of, you could say signs which were simmering along, were not sort of fitting into the, framework of a disorder for people to identify. But clearly signs where people were noticing that there is something,
Off.
yeah, off very clearly.
And then you said that one day your sister noticed something and staged an intervention. Can you tell us a little bit about that day?
She was a very sharp observer also of human nature. Uh, that alertness helped a lot. In caregiving, that's so vital. Yeah, spotting these kind of red flags. And she was noticing since a while, because we used to get into ugly quarrels, and otherwise we sort of hit off very well as siblings. There was hardly anything to sort of any reason for friction between us. But it was because of the way I was behaving. I was responding to anything that challenged me, sort of. If at all any criticism came my way, I used to arrogantly sort of turn it down. You don't know. I have your vision isn't big enough to see what I see and stuff like that. Now that was bordering on grandiosity, and she somehow perceived this. And now from this stage, then it became even more absurd. Okay, so for instance, uh, my sleep cycles, right? I used to wake up till late night, uh, get up at odd times in the daytime, lost interest in the work I was doing. Various other elements which she noticed were, completely were red flags, for to her mind. And then what she said is, let's go to see a psychologist. I was already in a phase of denial. Uh, and so as I used to sort of brush her aside, typically, all our interactions in that phase, I said to her is, it's you who are you who you it's you who get needs to get your mind fixed. I'm completely in charge of myself. You don't know what I'm headed for in life, and those kind of comments. Okay. Somehow she sort of convinced me, literally dragged me to a psychologist, and we were there at a desk. By that time, my what I didn't identified by then that there was something off, but my behavior was so sort of wonky that though everybody around me could sort of notice it. I was blabbering continuously in the journey right up to Pedder Road, where the clinic was based, yeah, from the suburbs. And again, all grandiose stuff, yeah. And it was getting more and more grandiose in nature, more colorful and stuff, right? So people were literally getting alarmed now, yeah. At the therapist's desk, she heard me out just for a few minutes. That's all she needed. And she knew this was a case to be, referred to a psychiatrist, that we had gone to the wrong professional. And that's what she opined. And Tejal, my sister, being the resourceful person she is, had already sought an appointment with a psychiatrist. Back to the suburbs then from there. Yeah. Now she had gone through this go through kind of a route, because I would have flatly refused to go to a psychiatrist, in that frame of mind. Yeah. So she knew we would land up there in any case. So there we were. And again, on the journey back, again, I was talking continuously, because verbosity is part of the symptom then, And I landed up at the psychiatrist's desk and I was talking rubbish, literally gibberish, okay? That I solved the Bermuda Triangle and stuff like that. And he's looking at me with awe and say, and I said, I think, doctor, that I have schizophrenia. He says, no, you don't have anything of that sort. What you have is manic depressive illness. Somehow, I don't know, schizophrenia is a term which had stuck in my mind and I blurted it out. I had no clue. I had thought I had schizophrenia, by the way. And I was so exhausted with all my sort of, what was happening inside me. I collapsed at his desk, literally. Yeah. Passed out at his desk. From there, I was admitted, taken straight to hospital. So that was how dramatic it was, my diagnosis part. Imagine landing up at a therapist's place, then going to a psychiatrist from there, and then landing up straight at hospital. Yeah.
Can you tell us what the exact diagnosis was?
So at that time, by the way, I was diagnosed in May 2003. At that time, the term used for bipolar disorder was manic depressive illness. The nomenclature only subsequently was changed to bipolar disorder.
And, I would really like for you to explain to someone what bipolar disorder is, because if you ever go out there and you ask someone, they'll say highs and lows.
Yes.
And we still have some amount of vocabulary and reference for depression. So, you can, at least so far, the explanation of depression that has been given around me is not too bad.
Yeah.
But for the manic part, it's completely off.
Yes.
People say happy. And I don't think that's an accurate description of mania from in any manner. So if you could just, sort of help us understand what is mania, what are the behaviors of mania, yeah.
So firstly, you shared something which is very, very accurate, Ira. Sometimes I also get very frustrated about it, that it is, oversimplified into a happy. Have you seen the memes of, a happy face and a sad face for bipolar disorder?
Yeah.
I hate that, because what that is, it sort of completely distorts what the disorder does to a human being. It is far more graver than that to begin with. And it is not also only about happiness and sadness.
Yeah.
That is also not it. Secondly, people also sometimes say that mood swing to sabko hota hai. Everybody has mood swings. So what's the big deal, What people do not realize is the severity of the mood swings that we are talking about, that the severity of the episodes, right? So, of depression, that which I have already spoken about, where a person would even feel suicidal, trigger warning if you would want to add to that. But that's what also is a fact, that many people living with bipolar disorder lose their lives in the depressive episodes. Yeah. Uh, and the destruction that it causes to a person. Also, another aspect of bipolar depression, and I guess that also fits in for major depressive disorder, sometimes it is not only sadness as people perceive it. Sometimes it is a complete inability to feel an emotion.
Mm.
I can't
It's the
even feel
hopelessness.
sad.
Yeah.
I would want to feel sad. I would want to grieve at somebody's passing away, and I can't grieve. There is that emotional flatness also.
Mm.
So, where is even that sadness aspect accurate? Mania is not a pleasure trip, it's not a walk in the park. Firstly, a big myth that mania is not cannot be equated to happiness. There is so much happening in your brain, in your mind, at such a hurricane pace. You are just trying to connect the thoughts that you are experiencing at the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
It is devastating for the person and for the people around the person who don't know what's happening. A lot of lives have been destroyed because of a single manic episode. Single episode. To cite an instance, uh, a woman has a married woman has an affair during one of her manic episodes. The person, her spouse, doesn't have that insight into her condition or the awareness to be empathetic enough or to be understanding enough of what led to this. No doubt that was a shattering incident for the couple. I'm not denying that. And then that leads to a split in the marriage. After maybe a year or so, they're back again, when the person sort of comes to that understanding that this is not the personality of the nature of the intrinsic nature of the woman. It is something which she had zero control over, which caused this particular incident. Now imagine this happening to that woman, her having that zero control over her behavior, and extrapolate it to various other circumstances. This is not to scare people, but let's put serious mental disorders, put them in the right perspective, under the let it be under the right light.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not window dress them and make them look like anything lesser than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's also what sometimes media and cinema tends to do.
Mm-hmm. So, from at least what you described as your day at with the psychologist and then the psychiatrist, um, I don't think people realize that if anyone has ever conducted a workshop for 3 hours, they will know that they get exhausted after that.
Yeah,
And you're not even talking the whole time.
right.
So if you can just imagine not being able to stop talking
Yes.
for 6 hours
Yes.
non-stop, and like I'm still taking breaks. I'm assuming that when you're manic, sometimes you just keep talking like this and it just does not end, and you maybe go faster and people maybe not even be able to understand what you're saying because you just keep talking and
Yes.
talking and talking and talking. And then that goes on for 6 hours. You'd be completely exhausted. And then, not being able to fall asleep because there's so much going on in your mind. And these are some of the behaviors that I've been told of and I have seen. So, like you mentioned, buying things that you cannot afford, and then having absolutely no way to, go back on that or repay this debt, quitting a job because you think you don't need it anymore. Um, More extreme ones of thinking you can fly. I've also heard that people don't remember what happened during their manic episodes.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned that you do, which is a very rare instance.
So it's it's on both sides of the spectrum. Some people remember with a lot of clarity what they do in mania, like I do, I know, I remember every incident that has happened, almost every phrase I have uttered in that sequence of things. But there are people who are, it's like amnesia for them, completely blank. They don't even know that they've had a manic episode. All they might remember is that, okay, they were in hospital for some time, and okay, that's it, blank for that period. So it's also a double-edged sword, I would say.
Both things.
Remembering brings in such a lot of shame, guilt, and typically what happens to me and happens to a lot of people with bipolar disorder is the post-manic period, when the mood set stabilizes, it doesn't stabilize to the baseline mood line. It plunges below that, because then there's ample time to ruminate on all your foolishness, all your craziness that has happened in that period, and you are ashamed of what you did in that span of time.
Yeah.
So remembering might not be such a blessing.
And not remembering might also lead to a bunch of
Yes,
confusion because
yes,
other people might be feeling things towards you
yes.
or behaviors you did that you don't actually remember
Yes,
doing. So both ways sounds quite difficult to navigate and
true,
manage.
true.
Um, I um, you've mentioned that it took 10 years after your
Yeah,
diagnosis to find the kind of medication that works for you, to find you know a place of kind of stability. I remember that I had like a 2 week period maybe where my medication got tweaked, only 2 weeks, and I just could not deal with the withdrawal, the side effects, so much so that I was like, I'm getting off medication. I'll try all these other, I will eat properly and sleep properly and whatever. So I just couldn't deal with it. And you did it for 10 years until you found the right medication. Um, I don't know how you did it, but can you, sort of shed some light on the fact that it can take time to
yes.
find the
I think
right.
I think that's a very important message that needs to be sent across. That firstly, recovery is not a linear journey.
Mm-hmm.
Even after your diagnosis happens, even if the diagnosis is accurate, sometimes there is confusion about the diagnosis as well. Even after that, suppose that also, mm, treatment will take time. Okay, for any severe mental health condition, one needs to be very patient. And I think that message especially needs to go out to families around that person. Uh, because what happens, of course, they feel frustrated, helpless, and feel that they are not doing enough for that person. But there's no shortcut to recovery. We all know that, right? So, in my particular case, uh, I was just narrated about my onset being typically at the age of 14, could have been even earlier, and diagnosis post 40. So there was a clear cut 26 years of gap between onset and diagnosis and treatment. So, as in any serious health condition, whether physical or mental, the earlier the intervention happens, the higher the chance of the disorder or the illness being pulled back and stabilized. So I wouldn't blame my psychiatrist. Mm, he couldn't be sort of blamed for the treatment not happening earlier. And what happens also is that I would like to also share this is every severe mood episode, there is intense change happening in your brain.
Mm.
So,
Physical.
so it's a trauma to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now the brain also has sort of gone through a lot by that time during the period of 26 years. So then there is much more to sort of contend with. One needs to be very, very patient about this, and that's the only way to go about it. And how did I develop the patience? I am naturally not so somebody who has got tons of patience, but I had shared it in passing that as a kid also I had asthma. And my asthma also kept getting worse and worse as I grew up till it almost got life threatening. And it took me more than 2 decades to stabilize my asthma. So I took that inspiration, as a recovery platform for me. That if I could be patient with that condition where many professionals had given up hope on me, why can't I do it for bipolar disorder? It's not such a monster that I can't conquer, right? So that's the sort of model that I built for myself. And it's not that the 10-year period was completely bleak either, but it was a roller coaster kind of a ride. Yeah, the ups and downs were noticeable. And my sister used to be more impatient for a change than me, telling my psychiatrist repeatedly that, look, this guy is so disciplined, he does every damn thing to be stable. And what's happening? you know. So one day he even suggested something to us. He says, look, I'm trying my level best. There are only these number of mood stabilizers that have been created for bipolar disorder. His body is sensitive to most of the combinations that I've been trying earlier. And at my wit's end, in short. So if you feel that I am not good enough, I would like to send you to my guru, for a second opinion. And so he was referred to his guru, his mentor, and that he was a very elderly doctor. And he also said that you're on the right sort of combination of meds. You just need to be patient about the process, and you are with a very good doctor. I think that sometimes that reassurance also is needed. Apart from that, I would say trust in your doctor is important.
But that's a
Very difficult
place.
But my doctor made it very easy for me, Ira.
In your case, but
Yes.
just wanted to bring up, sometimes it's hard to find a doctor
Yes.
that you can trust, and you also went through an experience
Yes.
where you didn't necessarily get the best medical advice.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned that one of your doctors suggested that you got married and that
Yes.
would help the disorder.
So this is such a dichotomy, right? On one hand, I had a fantastic psychiatrist, but in one of my impulsive phases where I felt that I was get stagnating, of course, that was in the early part of my recovery journey when I had hardly any sense about my condition. So I realized that, okay, let me try a fresh approach. And I was referred to another psychiatrist who put up a rosy picture in front of me. That's exactly what I wanted at that point of time. Firstly, he says that why were you hospitalized? There was no need to be hospitalized. Uh, this is what you're living with is it's not such a serious condition. In all probability, in 2-3 months, you will be completely all right. Yeah. Then my sister got alarmed and she asked him, what about his mood swings then? There is nothing such as mood swings, he says. This guy should get married. It will solve a lot of his problems. So, yes, this is also the sad part of psychiatry or medicine in general. You need to pick and choose because your life literally can depend on advice, suggestions, the support you receive from your healthcare professional, right? I can't sort of underline that hard enough. It's very critical. Again, about trust. Fine, I had a good doctor, but what would I expect of a good doctor? I think that also needs to be elaborated upon, right?
Yes, please.
So I think one of the things is the lack of communication between a client and the medical professional. We see that so often, right? Uh, Trying to brush issues under the carpet. My psychiatrist never mince words. He used to tell it to me in my face that this is the condition you live with, this is the seriousness, this is what you can expect out of it, the prognosis. Every time he handed me out a prescription with some change medicine, he used to also prepare me for the side effects to expect out of it from the change. Yeah. So meticulous to the core. Trust develops when when the person is trustworthy. You can't blindly trust somebody, can you? Right? The person needs to be worthy of that trust. The professional also in this case. So I think that's very critical to also ensure that the person complies and then sticks around for the 10-year period, sort of, which we described. I hung around for.
I would imagine that only if you trusted your doctor would you be able to be like, I'm going to keep trying, keep trying,
Yes.
keep trying. Yeah. Another really tricky part about bipolar disorder that I've heard is that you usually ask for help when you're feeling depressive.
Yeah.
And so then you'll go to the psychiatrist and you'll explain all your depressive symptoms. And then they might give you antidepressants, which could then trigger off a manic episode. So I think we need to learn to find a balance between give your physician some time to understand you and your manifestation of your disorder. But also, like you said, communication will then
Yes.
be your best bet
Yes.
to ask questions about what you don't understand and, to sort of really invest in your own treatment journey because then you believe in it and then you might actually stick to it. You're, for lack of a better word, stable now, in remission.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to understand, and I wanted you to share how much of that is your lifestyle? What does that look like? What does stable look like?
I would say a large part of my recovery I can owe to my lifestyle. See, however good your psychiatrist is, there is a limitation of what meds can do for you in a severe mental health condition, right? So, of course, I am not being ungrateful to his contribution to my recovery. That's been the fundamental role. So I would say, separate it into two parts. One is what I can do on my own, and you talked about the environmental factors, things which are outside my control, whether they are positive or negative, detrimental to me. To simplify things, I focus on what is under my control, right? That is taking care of my physical health, mental health, taking adequate breaks, although tend to skip on those. But as far as possible, diverting my mind from the taxing kind of work that I do to something lighter. Uh, so it needs to be nurture for both mind, body, and soul. Yeah. So I do a lot of routines through my day, which sort of help me mm, uh, be healthy, be fit, and energetic. So I've been doing pranayam now for close to 30 years now. So, in fact, that had been advised to me for my asthma to build up my lung capacity. And then it has become such an integral part of my day. To skip it it seems odd, for me. So it doesn't feel like something that has been forced onto me. That's one thing. Then I used to go for walks, brisk walks, and all. Even that was recommended to me to ensure that my elasticity of my lungs would be high. I shifted from there to gym training, strength training at the gym. And that also helped me a lot because one of the things that bipolar disorder does is, which is also a facet that must be brought up here, is along with the swings in the moods, there is also a swing in energy, which not many people are aware about. So I guess it's easy to fathom for most people that in depression, typically the energy also would be low. You can't imagine a person who is severely depressed to be energetic. It doesn't just fit in, does it? And in mania, also in the descriptions, also that came across, all the plethora of thoughts, the speed of things, and the extreme energy that we have. Uh, so the energy sort of peaks then. But what we typically seek is we don't want this kind of yo-yo kind of energy swings, do we? That's not how we can be functional and be sort of productive in our lives. And it can be disconcerting for the people around us also. So my workout routines, my pranayam help me balance out my energy levels also.
Mm-hmm.
because I suffered a lot from chronic fatigue syndrome also. Completely drained out by midday, that used to be the challenge I used to face, even after my moods were sort of fairly okay. So this is where I would say that there are so many sort of aspects to a condition like bipolar disorder that when we reduce it to a happy face and a sad face, they do a lot of disservice to the people who have suffered so much with that condition, right? Yeah. Then also it's also about hydration, positive thinking practices that you do, the hobbies one pursues. Yeah. Uh, I like poetry. I like drawing. It's small things that we do. Being with family, going out for drives, the small thing. I think those are also important. That these lead to collectively building up our resilience. So since we do not have control over the external factors, this is how at least we can create a protective inner sort of a, so shell for us that protects us if the going is not good externally.
And how long would you say that you have been stable for?
I would say to be at a really satisfactory level because of my level of perfectionism for around 7 years, where I haven't had a single mood episode or had to rush to my doctor with in an emergency situation. So
And that looks like a certain amount of medication and then, your lifestyle choices
yeah.
that you've made.
Also, what it to a person who is listening in to this podcast, this is also an important message. I began with around 12 medicines going in my body a day. Now I'm on two medicines, just two medicines taken in the night, which are subtherapeutic dosage. So things can change drastically, right?
Yeah.
So it can be overwhelming when we are at the when the whole thing begins, when your treatment begins, and you are look what's this? What am I taking in? Right. So the remission also means the need for less meds to keep me on that even keel as compared to previous times.
And this is because you mentioned that. I think one of the, well, I don't know. I feel like you've been going through it longer than I have, so maybe you have uh, better ways to describe it, or different ways to describe it. But the whole journey of accepting it so that you can help yourself get to this place where you have perspective and you have patience and you can be like, okay, it's difficult now, but it will get better. Because I remember that it was very, the thought of, is this what my life is going to be like now for the rest of my life? Am I constantly going to be worried about, oh, am I going to have an episode next year?
Yeah.
Or am I always going to be exhausted? Or maybe I won't be exhausted all the time, but I have to consider the fact that maybe every 6 months I'll get really tired and I won't be able to do the things that I was normally able
Sure.
to do. And I think everyone goes through a period where they feel victimized, and especially when there's lack of awareness, lack of insight in yourself, this lostness that you can't articulate, it's very easy to get into this space of, I don't know how long this is going to go on for, and who I am now, that this is what it is.
So acceptance is such a key part of recovery, isn't it? Uh, and it does need to, I mean, there is a big need to bring it into the conversation because that can be a big stumbling block. So we call it even that as a spectrum, right? There could be people who are in complete acceptance. Now, again, complete is something which is questionable, and in denial. Yeah. Denial also can be at different levels of denial. Yeah. So it's on a pendulum, right? Fortunately, I was never in denial after my diagnosis happened. That was a blessing for me. It was once my diagnosis happened, I wasn't in that struggle. No, no, I can't be having bipolar disorder. There's something wrong in the diagnosis. Nothing of that sort. Or I need to take a second opinion. This guy's got it wrong. That would have sort of maybe messed up things further. But I would say, apart from just accepting the condition, which is also important because that helps everything to be set off on in the right, direction. You're compliant with treatment, seeking appointments with your mental health professionals, whether it is therapists or your psychiatrist, as the case might be. Also, sounding out your family members. I think those things are essential, isn't it? Uh, but even acceptance, to my mind, is very layered, isn't it? You also described it so well. Now, to begin with, when I was diagnosed, what did it feel like? Like that is something I must share here. I was lying on the bed of Holy Spirit Hospital, Andheri, looking at the ceiling, and the first thought that came to my mind was, now I am mentally ill. So, okay, I've accepted the illness, but have I accepted what that means to me then, internally, right? Because then it is taking me to the direction of shame, guilt, rejection, and those territories, right? So acceptance is also about being completely at peace with yourself, the way that you are. That you are not, you don't need to explain yourself away to anybody, right? You are a complete human being the way you are. No, it's not that I'm saying this when I'm in remission. Even if I'm in a state of great struggle, I need to be able to feel that. But very rarely we do feel like that, right? Because the stereotypes around mental disorders are so hardwired. They in turn sort of put up, such a burden on us, and we carry that burden for a long while to come to terms with that space that, okay, even if I'm broken, I love the way I am, right? That's self-compassion, self-love, so it extends from that accepting the diagnosis to completely being okay with I am the way I am. In fact, loving the way I am with all my flaws.
I think that's something that even people without mental illness struggle with.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think then when you add the mental illness, there are a couple of facets. One is when you said that you have to accept that you have a mental illness, you have to first figure out what it means to you
Yes.
to have a mental illness. Because sometimes there's stigma from outside, but a lot of times there's stigma within yourself. So I think people think that acceptance happens in a moment, or like there's this switch that happens inside you. But at least in my experience, it's been a bit of a journey where you bit by bit start to accept different aspects of it, and are able to see yourself as many different things put together, one of which may be that you have an illness or you have certain restrictions on what you do, which may not necessarily be sad.
Yes.
Or but it could also be, because you don't want to glamorize it. There will be restrictions, there will be things that you need to be mindful of. But it's sort of that middle ground, finding that balance.
It's so complex, isn't it? Yeah, it's so complex. And as you say, there is again no finite line that this person is in complete acceptance. We all evolve, right? It's only going to, if we are progressive enough in understanding ourselves, accepting ourselves, we'll just go along in that process, right? Also, I would like to add here, acceptance also goes beyond the disorder part of it, the mental health part of it. uh, it's an aside to what you just shared, that you were worried about what would happen to you in the coming days, maybe your career, your personal life, your relationship, all just question marks in your life. So acceptance might also be to be realistic in toning down aspirations at one point of time. I'm not saying just discarding them, to be realistic. It's not easy to be so, right? Yeah.
I guess finding a compromise that you're happy with,
Yeah.
even if it may not have been your
Yes.
initial desire or aspiration.
And again, the goalpost can keep on shifting. So it's not that what I felt was realistic for me 20 years back is now my goalpost can be way behind. Right? So even that's there. But being realistic definitely helps in that frame of mind.
I know that you wanted to say a little bit about how spirituality helped you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's also a note of caution because people, especially with bipolar disorder, have associated themselves with a deep dive into spirituality, that pursuit of what's the truth, what am I, who am I, amidst their episodes.
okay.
So and this can be very personal to every individual, right? But as a kid, I was not a very spiritual person. Even as a young man, I wasn't there. I think my struggles opened me up to a power higher than me. Maybe there was a necessity to draw from that power because the struggle was so intense. I was so lost for hope. There was no other option left for me. And then that began as what began as a necessity evolved to a beautiful journey that became philosophical in nature, sort of answered a lot of existential questions of my life. Why me, who me, and all the, who am I, and all those questions that we typically are sort of bombarded with. I found most of those answers. And most importantly, it gave me the purpose of my life. I think that sets me, free because I know now what I am doing is exactly what I have been meant to be doing all my life. There's no search any longer. That's the sense I get. And at the back of the mind, I know that it's not that I am walking this path alone. There is a guiding force that's aiding me in my journey. But I would be amiss if I missed out on saying that my family has been a rock solid support all through, not judging me, holding a safe space for me, always being encouraging, supporting me in any of my choices. Some of them, them are not, have never been conventional. Also, let me say this: many of the choices have not been, what fits into judicious choices, one could say, but they have been with me all this way. I would be ungrateful if I don't give credit to God for where I am today. I see a lot of my life being, the way it has played out as a grand plan of destiny. Okay, this might sound a little grandiose, but it isn't. Because if I observe my vast journey, it's been really transformational. So somebody might have created this design way in the beginning, and I had no way of seeing that picture when I needed to see it the most. So I'm grateful to that higher power.
Yeah.
For the small graces in life. Yeah.
I mean, I'm done with my questions, but every time I have spoken to you and every time I've heard about your journey and everything that you've done, and also the almost, I mean, I don't want to say relentless, but the sincerity and the patience and the consistency with which you have shared your story, reached out to people, tried to spread awareness. I really remember this phone call that I had with you, and I was hoping it was a text conversation, but it wasn't. It was a phone call, so now I don't have evidence. But I remember I had called you from an airport, and I had needed help with a referral, and sometimes it really does feel bleak. In terms of, where can you get help, especially when it comes to severe mental health disorders. I don't know how you did it, and I'm so glad that you did it. And I remember feeling like people like you paved the way for us to be having the conversations that we are currently having. And for that. So, before we end, something that I'm working on still in my mental health journey is appreciating the little things, I guess. And I learned that we as human beings are naturally wired to look at the negative things because they're threats, right? So if I don't see a threat, then how do I save myself from that threat? The idea that if there's a burning building, obviously I'm going to look at it to make sure I don't die. But then can I remember to focus on the cake that's in front of me? And so what I wanted to do today is I wanted us to write down something that happened today. Not yesterday, not last week, not in life. Yes, we all love our parents every single day. But I feel like in the present, something today that was not negative. Let's do it. Can I say these pens? These pens are my special thing for today.
Yeah, sorted.
Ready? Pouring clothes from my mom for today's podcast because at 8 a.m. I was like, Mom, I don't have any clothes. And then she was like, come, I will help you. What are yours?
Okay, several things actually. They really made my day. Makeup at Colleen's. Thanks to you.
I love Colleen.
Okay. Being in a studio setup brought back memories of my AV days. Yeah. Seeing all the gear here, tech gear here. And the fantastic team here. I mean, it's all about people, isn't it?
Thank you, Vijay, for being here and for allowing us to be curious and sharing your story with us. Thank you for watching The Curious Case Off with me. In the description below, there will be links, further reading, summaries, guidelines, resources, everything that we could find and put together that we think you might find helpful. Just to reiterate that everything that is said in the episode as well as in the resources below should not be used to self-diagnose. If you have any questions or queries, please reach out to a mental health professional who is qualified. And if you like the episode, then like, share and subscribe to Agatsu Foundation, our YouTube channel. And if you want to know anything more about the organization, then you can find out at www.agatsufoundation.org.